we go. She is a singer and actress. He's a former NFL tight end, and together they are taking their People's Choice nominated podcast, Wind Down with Jana Kramer and Michael Caussin, on tour. Jana and Michael join us now. Great to see you guys.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Nice to see you.
Thank you so
your
much.
People's Choice nomination. Was that a surprise to you?
It was a total shock.
Such a surprise. Even our producers said that we might have a chance. We're like, yeah, okay.
We were like,
not gonna happen.
no. And then now we're like, there's no chance of winning, but it's so cool to be nominated. Like,
yeah.
it's awesome.
Well, it's amazing. How did you celebrate when you found out?
So I was on the way to do something I was interviewing, and then I was like, holy crap, babe. But then we had dinner, I think just at the night with the kids.
And we just had a glass of wine to reflect on it and be appreciative.
Like, we go to bed at 8 o'clock, so we're like,
Take it easy. Take it easy.
boring couple ever. If it's like, the other day we're like, it's 7:45 and we're in bed and we're like high-fiving. It's like the greatest
if you're
night
on board together with that, I think that can be like the best night. It really can be.
Ever, yeah.
But if one of you is like ready to go.
I know, and we're like binging our shows right now on Netflix, so we're like having like a great old
Let's
time.
just say this. I think that it's like, how great is the validation of getting nominated, that what you're sharing on this podcast is really resonating with people, and it's serious, it's fun, they're singing, there's a lot to it. What's your favorite thing about the shows that you're putting out?
So the shows, well, I mean, the podcast that we air, I think it's just really great how we're able to obviously be vulnerable, but connect with a lot of other couples and people out there in relationships. But then with the tour, it's really cool. It's like this variety show, and we come out and people are laughing. I'm like, are we funny? Like, I was just like, let's keep going. And then, then we kind of always have a takeaway with the show, for couples out there. And then, I sing. It's just fun. It's a fun night.
Yeah, and you're singing on the tour. You have a
Yeah.
new song out, Good Enough. Why was this a really important song for you?
So I was writing the song, and I feel like every time I've ever ended a relationship, I'm like, why wasn't I good enough? Like, why wasn't I good enough for them? And so I was writing that. Then I was like, no, I should be good enough for myself. It shouldn't be about whether I'm good enough for a guy or whoever I'm with. Like, I should love myself more.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like that anthem.
I love the female empowerment vibes that you
Thanks.
put out.
Yeah. I also think that when, I would imagine, doing the podcast and being vulnerable in a studio where you're recording is one thing. Being vulnerable in front of an audience where they react in the moment is a whole other thing, I would think, right? Is your approach different in that way? Do you feel pressure to have it, like, I don't know, really buttoned up and put together in a way that you wouldn't feel in the podcast?
No, because even on the podcast, our producers honestly love us because they don't have to edit very much, because we just kind of let them, anything goes.
Okay.
So sometimes it's harder on the podcast, I think, because there's not a reaction. You don't see any kind of validation or understanding. You don't see heads nodding and that feeling of the room. That
makes sense, yeah.
Sometimes on the podcast, before it airs, we're like, was that too much? How's that going to sound? And it's all just, it's up in the air until we hear it.
Yeah, you two really put it all out there, and I think that's why the podcast is so successful. You had a recent podcast episode that was very real about an incident that happened.
Yeah.
So basically what happened, Michael, you got a text from a woman, topless photo, and then had deleted it. You found out, and it caused a big issue, and you put this all on the podcast episode.
Well, I didn't even know we were going to do that, because I was just like, we had just found out about it, and it wasn't actually a real person. It was a bot. And a few other people had gotten kind of very similar message. So it wasn't a real person, but at the same time, finding it was what was so painful, because I'm like, I'm just sick of finding things, whether it was true or not. But I didn't think we were gonna talk about it. And usually I'm the one that like airs our dirty laundry.
We were 24 hours from her discovering this.
Yeah.
And we did the show going into it, we're like, all right, we just have to get through this, we have to work, show goes on, let's be surface level. And then we just started getting into it.
And he's the one that's, I was like, you really want to talk about it? I was like, because usually I'm the one being like, well, this is what happened. He's like, I was like, go ahead. And then it was just like, we were just not ready. And so we definitely regretted sharing that so soon.
As early.
Because we just were not together, unified yet. And I was still like confused and hurt. So yeah.
When you talk about it and you aired it all out, it did kind of make sense that you just didn't want to deal with it, so you deleted it.
Right.
But then
I totally get that, and
Yeah.
I 100% like.
Which in a lot of
totally
relationships
get it.
would probably be totally fine. But because of our history and about being trust and trying to regain that, it just didn't work, and that's okay.
Yeah, obviously that colors the whole thing differently.
For sure.
When it comes to just the passive, everything you've gone through, you've gotten flack from fans about staying in your relationship.
Yeah.
I would imagine, and I'm sure that you get flack for everything you talk about. People have opinions and they air them and they let you know. How have you dealt with, and particularly how do you kind of like silence the noise of naysayers who are like, what are you doing?
This one was really hard, to the point where we had to cancel a few things, because I was like, I'm gonna have a freaking nervous breakdown. Like, I'm having so much anxiety around the comments, because it was the first time that it got to me, because we weren't unified and together in a strong place. So I think lesson learned, don't look at things when I'm not in a healthy place, because it only feeds the anxiety. But at the same time, I know he didn't cheat in that instance. I know certain things, so it's like I just have to be like, okay, well, they don't know all the facts. I know, and just trying to stay like what I know is the truth. But it's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard, and it's also, I mean, anxiety is really real and hard to deal with. What are some ways that you found that kind of helps you with those?
Unfortunately, I had to end up taking medicine for it, but I'm working on a new thing with my therapist called EMDR, which is a sensory way to work through trauma. So I'm working on that, and then just other things too. I mean, I know this sounds like crazy, but like I hate driving in expressways because I get claustrophobic. And what if there's traffic? So I'm like, I just try to avoid it if at all costs. So there's like I just do things to like make sure I'm not like adding more anxiety.
At a different level, when I go over bridges, I have that.
Yeah, no, totally.
Right? It's like the huge bridge. It's like,
Yeah,
what?
no,
It's a feeling.
And Jana does a lot better these days of asking for what she needs.
Okay.
In the past, she wouldn't do that. And I also wasn't very receptive because I didn't really understand anxiety.
But he just had his first anxiety attack, not to like.
Hope you've worked through this before. She's outing you on that right now.
Finally, you understand.
But no, I was like, Michael, you don't everything. That's an anxiety attack. He's like, no way, I don't have anxiety.
What
I'm
was
like,
it
"Man."
surrounding?
On the first one I had nothing.
Yeah,
and then
but
the
I'm
second
like,
the
that
second one I had
happens.
was around this recent event where I just felt like I needed to flee. I felt like I couldn't control anything. I mean,
Couldn't
just
breathe,
couldn't breathe. Every
yeah.
symptom you could name, and then
I was
for a
just like,
panic
honey,
attack
that's
I
an
had.
anxiety.
And so then were you helping him through kind of like, here's the steps?
Yeah, and he was just like,
Yeah, really.
no, I'm a man. This isn't like, I don't get anxiety. And I'm like, babe.
I can control this.
Yeah, he's like, you can't control it. I mean, you can, but it's hard. So.
Men have emotions too.
Yes,
it turns out.
Now you two have 2 kids,
Yeah.
3 and almost 1, right?
Yep, 3.5, and then I can't believe he's almost 1. Ugh, in 1 month he's yeah.
So cute. Fans are going to be getting a closer look at your lives as parents in your online series Imperfect Harmony. You're expanding to 2 nights a week.
Yeah,
so yeah, what are we going to see on this?
Oh gosh, well the daytime show is gonna be more a little bit like reality, and the nighttime show is more like our tour. But you know, again, we're kind of opening the doors into our house, into our home, and just telling you what not to do, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you know what? I truly, from a marriage perspective, I appreciate your openness in painting a realistic picture that, hey, relationships aren't perfect. And imperfection doesn't mean you have to abandon ship, right?
Yeah.
And then with kids, that's a whole other thing, and how you're going to talk to them about it. As they get older, what's your approach going to be in terms of addressing the things of the past?
For sure. I mean, that's one of those things where Jana and I kind of talk about, we don't know what that age looks like, but we're going to be open and honest with them because we want them to feel comfortable. We want them to have all their questions answered, and it come from us and not from outside sources.
Yeah.
Maybe before they start Googling.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing now is everything on Google.
Well, you also like verbalize these things, so I think you probably know how to address it in terms of like, here's what we
Hopefully
should
by
say.
then we'll even be more united and be like, that was this many years ago as opposed to a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And Julie's only 3.5, but does she kind of pick up when there are disagreements or arguments?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, if we start to get a little too animated or loud, she'll kind of act out and say stop or no or don't talk.
Which like kills me. So I'm like, we need to table this immediately.
Yeah.
But again, our therapist told us that kids shouldn't see a perfect household. They should see conflict and resolve. So it's like they should see maybe us disagreeing, but then also coming around and being like, okay, this is how we resolved it.
I leaned heavily into that. Like, they can see us argue.
Yeah.
Like, this is happening right now, and they're fine.
Yeah.
Girls, this is fine. We still love each other. Now listen.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, not about me. Jana, let's look at this. You posted this picture on Instagram revealing the
Oh, yeah.
struggles that you were facing as a mom, and I can feel the pain as a fellow parent. What's been the response from fans to this photo? How do you two approach difficult moments as parents specifically?
So this one's actually been really tough because when I was reading the comments, a lot of people was like, your kids need the belt. And I'm just like,
Oh, yeah.
so then it became like that conversation, and it's just like, we don't spank, but I had the belt when I was a kid. Did you have a belt? So it's like, I mean, personally, like that's just not how I'm like, no judgment, but it's
That's
just
not how you're doing it.
It's just very tricky. But it was I think it's the first time I've actually cried from being beat up for my child. But it's like I tried everything from like consoling her to talking to her to to timeouts. It's a difficult age right now. So it's just I felt like I just cried and I needed to cry. It was a tough one for me.
Have you found
so.
something that is working?
Well, that was just a couple days ago, so give me like a few more
Need
days
some
to try and like
We've
figure it out.
tried
I don't know if
everything.
she's just
We've tried getting on her level. We've tried disciplining, but the good thing
The other
is,
night too, Mike goes, as we're trying to like reason her, he goes, "Hey, can I slam the table?" I was like, "No." let me try to like
dinner,
tell
I wanted to
codes.
kind of make a statement. I was like, "Can I slam it?" She's like, "No," but thanks for asking.
Yeah. Like, naturally, please, like, start listening to mommy and daddy.
Yeah.
So it's just, we're working through it. But it's hard to have people's judgment, too. It's like, oh, your daughter's a brat. I'm like, she's 4. You know, like, let's.
Yeah. And guess what?
Please.
4-year-olds can be bratty. That's what they
Yeah.
do, sort of.
Yeah.
They're
Right? It's kind of
She's my brat.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's wonderful, though, that you are so open about it, helping a lot of parents out there. So thanks for everything that you do.
Yeah.
Congrats on the nomination.
Woo-woo.
And everyone, be sure to listen to their podcast, Wind Down with Jana Kramer and Michael Caussin, and pick up tickets for their tour.
All right, let's take a look at our question of the day. We've been asking if you would rather celebrate spooky season with Starbucks Phantom Frappuccino or Burger King's Ghost Whopper.
Oh, it's a close one. Oh. Looks like the Frappuccino won out.
Guys, do you have an opinion?
I don't drink
Whopper all
coffee,
day.
and I'm not really a big Whopper. It's like so much. It's
All
like,
day.
how do you like put your?
Yeah.
Never mind.
I think I would
You
go
said, Michael, yours is the Whopper?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
to Mike
All
on
right.
that one.
We'll be asking you a new question of the day tomorrow on People Now, so tune in for that.